thank you. Last month at the meeting, I was given a directive by the council to seek out what the White Flag Shelter is and what it would entail to bring such to our community. So I've reached out in several areas, and I just want to share a little bit before I get started with this. Beverly touched a little bit on it earlier. A White Flag Shelter would provide immediate short-term emergency shelter to individuals who have experienced or are experiencing homelessness during threshold-defined severe weather conditions. At the council's directive, I was to examine all elements involved with establishing a White Flag Shelter. As a resource, I had reached out to Vance Haywood, who is the pastor at St. John's Metropolitan Community Church. I also attended a meeting with Councilman Stover and the Franklin County Interfaith Council, where Pastor Vance answered questions regarding the White Flag Shelter that they operate. In doing so, Pastor Vance identified multiple factors to consider when evaluating the need to establish a White Flag Shelter. I had an enormous amount of information and thought I should condense it so it would be a little more understandable. I reached out not only to Pastor Vance regarding the White Flag Shelter, I also reached out to Franklin County. I actually had our chief input on this, and I've attached all of this so you'll have it for your review. But some of the things that Pastor Vance mentioned that were identified and that we should consider regarding a White Flag Shelter was insurance liability. In this packet, you have a statement from our insurance carrier mentioning what we can do and what we cannot do. They were not happy with us looking at this. They will require a separate policy if this moves forward with no more than 30 beds. So I've provided this for you all to look at. So that was one of the aspects that we had to consider. Amenities in the shelter. I know that the White Flag Shelter in Raleigh offers food. However, in our discussion, it's called Brown Bag Ministries. They provide the food. They prepare the food. However, the shelter pays for the food. So at the end of this exercise, what I've included does not include the money to have prepared food for the shelter here. And basically, there was a couple things that he mentioned. On nights that it's designated as White Flag, they actually bring the food in so that the individual doesn't have to determine if they want to seek food or shelter. So my understanding from Pastor Vance was the food was only provided on nights that were designated as White Flag. In the current shelter that they're in, they have showers. However, this is not a mandate by the state. And because of that, they do not offer toiletries such as soaps, towels, washcloths, toothbrushes, toothpaste. They don't provide all of that. So those were things that we would have to consider. In the white shelter that they offer, cots are provided by Wake County. We do not have cots here. So I've included those costs and blankets, and this was just general research on the internet. They mentioned staffing at their shelter. That's something we have to consider. They have paid staff now 24/7. I know that in our previous meeting it was stated that we would have volunteers. However, we have to be prepared for if no one shows up. If a volunteer is sick, 2 volunteers are sick, we have to be prepared for that.
Let me ask you this, even if you do have volunteers, is it required that the town have staff present?
If you have volunteers, I would say no, you just have to have roughly 2 people, or they have 2 people. There is, I don't think, a mandate that shows how many people you have to have. They typically have 2 people, and it's all based on gender.
Actually, they said that they didn't have gender. They said it could be 2 males or 2 females. Well, they didn't usually have 2 females, but it could be 2 males.
Unless I misunderstood, Councilman Stover, when we talked with Pastor Vance, because they have 3 shelters, it's a male identified, female identified, and a family shelter. If it was female identified, they would not allow 2 males to work that shelter.
But we're not gonna do that.
Right. I mean, I was finding facts, so I'm sharing what I found. This is what we would have. So I've put in my estimates 2 people to work roughly 15 hours during a white flag designated night. Also, I've added 2 police officers because if nights are back to back, I can't have roughly the same officer working if they're on shift.
So you're having the police officers stay here?
I would. Because if they're not trained in part of the information with the recommended staff, an individual would need to have CPR, Narcan, de-escalation training, and familiarity with mental health. And if our volunteers don't have all of that, or the employees don't have that, then I've got to have that available.
Where did that come from?
Pastor Vance.
Well, then, that's something that the volunteers could be trained in.
Right, I mean, I'm just saying, for right now, I've prepared this as if we don't have that. And then we have, the facility designation. Again, I know that it's been mentioned that it would be 1 shelter here. However, the shelter that I evaluated had 3 separate shelters. There's a cleaning aspect to it as well. And if you'll notice, I have an asterisk by food and a double asterisk by cleaning. On the second page, you'll see personnel costs, basic utilities for here, cots and blankets to purchase, cleaning supplies, and cleaning of the building. Cleaning of the building does not include ventilation. If they were, say, in this facility, we don't know what we would have to do for that. I've contacted an individual. They did not contact me back, but I wanted to share as much as I could with this because that's what I was asked to do. And finally, the economic impact, we don't know what that would be, so I've put that in there as well. But overall, I've estimated the cost to be about $155,963.
But that's assuming that there's no volunteer input,
Exactly.
which is not what we have proposed.
Exactly, but we've got to be prepared if we don't have volunteers. So that's what I'm
Interfaith
making.
Council has already looked at all this and is taking steps to meet most of these.
Okay. And in doing so, when I reached out, I wanted to confirm my numbers with Pastor Vance over at St. John's, and he told me the first year they operated, they did not pay rent, but with this, they were roughly $150,000 to $170,000.
They
So
also had 350.
120 the first year, 350 now.
Right. We're talking 5 to 10, maybe 20.
So in reaching out, I reached out to the county, to Andy Payne over at DSS. For the last 8 months, and this is a part of your packet, they have serviced 8 people, I believe it was. Let me see. I'm sorry, 6 individuals who reported being homeless during an 8-month period. I know I reached out to Beverly Kegley to get numbers. She provided me with 12, and then she provided me with McKinney Vento program, which deals with children who are considered homeless, and I think there was 19 on the list that you gave me. In your packet, I have provided that information as well, so you would have an understanding of that. Again, I asked the chief to prepare something for me as well. This is in the packet that goes into greater detail about what the county does, because the county does offer services for homeless people as well. So I want to share that. Any questions, concerns?
Is there an amount regarding what that insurance policy would cost?
It is not. There's an actual, if you'll notice on the email that was received, it says social services app PDF. We have to fill that out, get it back, and then they'll tell us what the cost would be.
How much money does the town receive annually in their budget for social services from the county and the state?
Well, we per se don't receive it from the state. When we have people who are in need, they go to social services. Social services will obligate and pay bills, utilities, etc. those individuals, but I don't know that amount.
So the town doesn't receive any funds from social services?
But the county does.
Yes.
And you have these costs here, in this chart here, and this is of your estimation and your work as well. Now, some of these costs, look at it and review it, some of these costs could be offset by, perhaps maybe some volunteer persons, or some with the skills that are required to run this, which will have an effect on these costs as well. If there is a skilled volunteer who's skilled in CPR and those skills that are required, then that will then have somewhat of an effect on your projected costs that you have.
These were estimated saying that we didn't have anybody.
So could our insurance carrier drop us because of this?
Yes.
Councilman Stover, I have a question. And you referenced the Interfaith Council, and so are they gonna be a part of this? Are they gonna be the directors of this?
Well,
Are
I
they
think
gonna
that
do
is
that?
something to be determined. What we have been proposing is a public-private partnership. And what the Interfaith Council and now several churches have approached me are all looking at is the town provides the space where the other agencies would provide the volunteers, the cots. We're looking at possibly purchasing a covered trailer where we could store the cots and, or as Pastor Van said, they use cots, but most shelters don't. Most shelters use mats, okay? We already have, how many do we have, Beverly? Four. And, I mean, last year I donated 10 cots to the Franklin County Volunteers. I mean, frankly, if it's cots we need, I would donate 20 tomorrow. And, you know, recruiting volunteers. I work for a volunteer organization, Civil Air Patrol, right? We have to do all this same training that they're talking about. You know, first aid, CPR, we don't usually do Narcan, but that's not a big deal. So it's nothing to expect a volunteer to be trained in that sort of thing. We have volunteer firemen who spend far more time doing training than what this is gonna require, and don't get compensated for it. So this would be a private, public, I think the biggest issue in my mind is the insurance. We don't know what the answer there is. We need to find that out. You know, and what's gonna be the insurance cost? There was an issue of crime. Pastor Van said they have not seen any great increase in crime around their shelters. And getting people off the street in many places has been shown to reduce crime, not increase it. So I think that, this is the first step. I think Mr. Medlin shows, here's what the worst case scenario. Well, I don't think that's what we're looking at. I think we're looking at something far down where this can be a partnership between NGOs throughout the town and county and cooperation with the town. And I don't see that these expenses are likely to be what we're looking at. We're probably looking at something far less.
Is it fair to say that, like in Raleigh, they have 3 of these shelters for the whole city of Raleigh?
No, this is just one organization. I think there are 2 other organizations that run shelters besides Pastor Vance's organization.
But it is likely if people from Rocky Mount could come here, people from Henderson could come here.
Highly unlikely. You're looking at, okay, this organization that we talk to, that Pastor Vance runs, they run 3 shelters and they staff a 4th, the Salvation Army. 2 of their shelters are what are called drop-ins. That means people can come in every day, every night, stay, and then every morning leave. Those are operated continuously. The White Flag is only operated on cold nights, all right? You've got multiple shelters in both Raleigh and Durham that are not only providing housing, they're providing detoxification, they're providing treatment for alcoholism and addiction, they're providing employment training and housing assistance, all right? We're not doing any of this. This shelter is not going to attract people from other counties. All the counties around us and all the cities around us are already providing far more service than we are. So why would people leave those places that have more services than we have to come here?
You're more well versed in this than I am, that's the only reason why I'm asking the question.
That's what I'm trying to explain. I mean, we are way behind the 8 ball in what the counties and communities around us are doing. So we're not going to be drawing people, in my opinion, from other counties. We're simply going to be taking care of people here in our locality. And we have to also realize, folks that are homeless are not terribly mobile. All right, a lot of them don't have a way to get up. I mean, they can't pick up their tent and they're gonna have to walk up here from Raleigh. I was driving up Capitol Boulevard after meeting with Pastor Vance, and there were tents all the way along Capitol Boulevard.